Okay, so hi everyone. Thank you for coming. This evening, we're chatting with Rafaella Fontes. Rafaella is the director for Champagne Bollinger and for Champagne Ayala. So thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me, Blake.
It's so beautiful up on the rooftop right there.
Yeah, we have a great view. This is the 41st floor, I believe, and we're looking south Manhattan here.
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
You see Freedom Tower just there behind me. It's kind of a foggy night, but that's nice. Otherwise, it gets like scorching hot up here.
It makes me miss New York. I've been gone from New York, my base, for 3 months. So I miss it terribly, but I need to be with family right now and hanging out down in the South at the beach and by the pool. So life doesn't suck, but I do miss New York very much.
So bad.
But I miss New York very much. So the last time we saw each other was, was actually in December at the 007 launch at Boom Boom
Yes.
Room. So
yes.
Bollinger sponsored that, which is no surprise since Bollinger is like the champagne for Bond films. It was so much fun.
So we didn't sponsor that. That was actually Omega's party. No, that was Omega's party. Well, so it looked like we sponsored it, but it was funny. Omega Watch was launching their new James Bond watch, and they asked if we wanted to pour champagne at it, and we said, yeah. And then they paid us to come on, and we set up our own bar. So it was Omega's party, but it looked like it was Bollinger's party, which was pretty cool.
Typical chick here. I didn't even look at the watch, didn't take one picture of the watches. I just drank the champagne all night, and it was perfect.
That was the point. Yeah, great.
So can you tell us a bit about your role as the U.S. director? Is that the complete title?
Yeah,
US
that's
director?
the official title, the U.S. director. So Bollinger and Ayala created this role for the first time in 2018. Before this, they had the fifth-generation family member, Cyril Delhousse, working here in the U.S. for 5 years, kind of helping develop the U.S. market. And he was ready to move back to France with his family. And they just said, maybe we should hire someone to live in the U.S. and work here. So they put up this job posting, and the job was really kind of open. They said, we want you to represent the house. Tell us what that means to you, kind of.
Oh, interesting.
So it was a really special role to get to enter because it was a collaborative role in the sense that I was able to bring what I really love about the wine business and what the house really wanted to exude about themselves, and for us to get to work together to see, what was the best way for me to help them implement that. So that looked very much like more of a sales-focused role, because that was my background. So working a lot with sommeliers and with people in the trade to introduce the champagnes, taste the champagnes, to educate about kind of specialties of the houses. And then also I took a more consumer-facing role than had been present before, hosting more dinners, creating a lot more events, finding interesting partnerships, being, kind of ears to the ground and just a person that loved champagne and bringing that into the circles that I was already in. So it's been a very kind of interesting sales and event balance. And then on the back end, I help a lot with just the national strategy of where we want to be featured, how we want to talk about the champagne, and who, and how we can get there. So it's been kind of a nice trifecta of a role that we've been able to create.
Yeah, that sounds like the best of three worlds in many ways. And I love that you took that position into your own hands and kind of got to run with it as one of the first people, or the first person in that role. Can you tell us? Go ahead.
So it's myself, and then I have a colleague in California. She's in LA.
Okay.
And she previously was the director at Wineberry, it's a boutique fine wine importer here in New York.
Yeah, I worked with Eric. One of the first people I worked with was Eric in Wineberry for Champagne Week. So I totally know the company. So can you tell us the link between Bollinger and Ayala?
Sure. It's an interesting story and something that I only learned once I started working for the houses. So Bollinger is a bit of a more well-known house, founded in 1829. They have a really rich history, family-owned since their founding. Ayala is a name that most people aren't as familiar with. One, I think people don't always recognize it's a champagne because the name itself doesn't sound French. And in fact, it's not. The founder, Edmond Ayala, is of Basque origin.
Oh, okay.
He was born in Paris. Yeah, he was born in Paris, but his father was a diplomat for the Spanish crown living in France. So he was a Frenchman, but born to a Spanish family. And he fell in love with a woman who lived in Champaign. And upon their marriage, he received the dowry of the vineyards. And he was actually a textile merchant, and he would make champagne and give it to his clients as kind of a gift. And his brother was more of an entrepreneurial spirit and said, the champagne I think is pretty good. We should do something with it. He said, okay, let's see what we can do. And they ended up becoming the first champagne of the Spanish crown. And the champagnes became super renowned and beloved across France, across Spain. And then they went even bigger, and they were actually one of the first houses to hit 1 million bottles in their export market. They were bigger than Bollinger in the 1900s. They were bigger than, Dom Perignon was even created, and Ayala was selling 1 million bottles. So it really was kind of this powerhouse, boutique spirit, family-driven domain. Unfortunately, they suffered a lot of hardship in being a family company. Not every generation wants to take on the previous generation's traumas. So in 1911, they had some riots in Champagne where the growers in the Aube region were going to be cut out of the appellation. And so they marched north with their pitchforks and torch sticks, and they just set fire to any house they saw in their path that they thought was kind of cutting them out of the region. And Ayala was literally burned to the ground. Luckily, they had the foresight to get insurance at the time, which was kind of unusual.
Forward thinking, yeah.
Yeah, so they actually were able to rebuild the entire house. So the house they currently have is the maison, is the house that was built in 1911. They rebuilt it, so everything is really done on that single property. It's super unique in Champagne. I can go back to that in a little bit, but they bankrupt their insurance companies. The insurance companies like, we're out of this game.
Yeah.
And then subsequently you have World War I. And some of the men go to war, and tragedy throughout Champagne. And you have World War II, and again, the men go to war, and the women at Bollinger actually helped the women at Ayala complete one of the harvests during the war. They have it written in the archives. And there's a funny little note that some Nazi soldiers invaded the house one night. 40 soldiers came in. They consumed 700 bottles and left Mr. Ayala a little IOU. When they came back into the house, they did not redeem that IOU, but they kept it and sent it to the newspapers. And the next generation's like, we're done. It's been riots, it's been war. I want to get back into the textile business. So they actually sold it to the Frey family, who owns Billicart Champagne. And they owned it for most of the 1900s. And Ayala had absolutely fabulous vineyards. So, the Frey family really enjoyed the ownership, but they didn't know kind of how to characterize Ayala after the family spirit left the house. And then in 2000, Bollinger kind of looked at its neighbor and was like, what's going on down the street? They literally are like a 3-minute walk down the road from each other in IE. And in 2005, the Bollinger family purchased Ayala because they said, we think there's so much potential in this house and it's just really being underutilized. So they brought in a whole new team. They helped refurbish a lot of the facilities at Ayala that had kind of, collected cobwebs and not been renovated. And they said, we think you guys have something really special here. And, we've seen the historical impact you've had. And Bollinger is really kind of a holder of history in Champagne. They maintain some traditional practices that are insane. And so this is very much in line with their philosophy of, kind of maintaining the history of Champagne. So, they brought back this historic house. And the team currently at Ayala is about 18 people. 10 people make the wine, and 8 people do the marketing, hospitality, and sales for it. It's a really boutique team. They're young, they're dynamic, they're really lovely. So that's kind of the balance of the two houses. They work totally independently, but they have this kind of, upper hand together. It's the Société Jacques Bollinger. It's technically SJB is the holding group. And they also have a property in the Loire Valley, Langlois Chateau, and a property in Burgundy called Domaine Chanson.
I've actually been, I usually stay in and I was there in 2016 when you all were doing a press trip for Bollinger and Ayala. But I had my own visit set up, and we stayed at the same hotel, which I think you probably stay at, Castelnau Jenson, the one right across from, or no, have you stayed there? It's beautiful.
So I know the hotel. We never stay there. They always put us in France because they're like, these girls came from New York. They're like, there's no way they're staying at night.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah,
I love it. So I've had really great experiences there. They have beautiful, they always upgrade you to a suite, but it is kind of, it's an interesting place. Like it's typical French, you know, you'll go to a restaurant, they'll be like, we're closed for like the next 5 days. You know, they just put a little sign on their door, like, we're not opening, we're done. We
yeah,
went to the printer, we're closing for the day. But the Ayala property is stunning. It is so gorgeous.
it's
I
really
mean,
beautiful.
both are beautiful, but the Ayala I love so much. And I felt like it has kind of this more feminine beat, and they're really, don't they have like an artistic incentive that they're
So
really into the
they have
art?
some close partnerships with some up and coming artists. They've maintained a lot of their historical archives of the art that was created in the 1920s and the early 1900s, kind of around the burgeoning brand. So they've kind of maintained that aesthetic and that respect for the original artists that kind of came up with them during that time.
So Ayala, I don't even know if you know this, had sponsored the opening party of Champagne Week year 4.
Yeah,
When
I remember talking to Cyril about this.
when Cyril was around, we had a blast. But they had done had the posters modeled from the art in the Maison that they used throughout the venue. And yeah, it was really amazing. So I've had a great relationship with Ayala so far, and
Great.
Bollinger too. So we have some questions that I'll just pipe in before we get to a little bit more about your role. But how many people work at Bollinger compared to Ayala?
So Ayala's entire team working at the Maison is 18 people. Bollinger, I'm going to have to do a little bit more counting in my head, so excuse me. They're probably closer to like 50.
Okay.
So we're still not giant. It's 45 to 50 people total, and between, like full-time. Bollinger, just for context, also is the second largest vineyard owner in Champagne for their own needs, after Louis Roeder. So the team they need to keep on hand to maintain all of their vines is much bigger. Ayala owns fewer vineyards, so they need fewer people in their production side on hand to constantly, check on the vineyards, drive the tractors, do all the maintenance. So that's really where the size difference comes. It's not on the sales and marketing team at Bollinger is 2 people right now.
Yeah. Okay. And then Mary Lou had asked, she missed the name of the Burgundy domain. Could you repeat that?
Yeah, Domaine Chanson, Chason. They're a large Burgundy negociant. They have some really beautiful single vineyards, but they're really known for their kind of southern Burgundy production. They have some vineyards in Fleury and some vineyards in Vieux-Classé, which is in the Macon region. Great value wines.
Yeah. Do you have, what are some of the initiatives that you have put into place or been a part of since joining the team? And when did you join the team?
So I joined the team in June 2018. So I just came up my 2-year anniversary.
Oh, okay. Congratulations.
It's actually like
cheers.
this week. So I'll put cheers. I'll do my 2-year post of my first trip to Champagne. So we were interviewing. This is kind of a funny story, and for anyone that's interested in like getting into this role, I think like take this as a coin of advice and not discouragement. I found the job on winejobs.com. Literally, I was reading Wine Business Daily, and at the bottom they list wine jobs, and I saw like Champagne Bollinger. It was brand ambassador at the time. They changed the title, and I was like, is that a real job? And I was like, email to yourself, like read later, make sure. I was working, in another job at the time. And I get home and I read over the job description. I'm like, it doesn't look like spam. I think it's real. Put together my resume, get all the application stuff together, like write my reason why I want to work with them, send it in, and radio silence for a week, for 2 weeks. And at the end of my cover letter actually wrote, like, I will follow up in 2 weeks if I don't hear from you. And I was like, I guess I'll follow up. And I was in sales, so I was like, this is just what you do. You just follow up when people don't answer. And I followed up, like, hi, I assume you must have hired for this role, but if you haven't, I'm still very interested. And right away, they're like, oh, we haven't hired. Are you available to interview tomorrow? Like, I'll make myself available, sure. And I did 6 straight days of interviews around New York City, going up to Pleasantville and Westchester, and calls with the team in France, calls the Vintage team here, the Vintage team nationally. And then it was silent for another 3 days. and like, you wrote all my follow-up thank yous, that I was still very interested. If they had any more questions, you have my contact. And then I get the call like, hi, you get the job. And I mean, I was mind blown. I was so excited. And like, can you start Friday? It's like Tuesday. I was like, can I have 2 weeks? Like, can you do like 1 week? They were very insistent because they had this trip booked in Champaign for us where they wanted us to start. And so finally, we start on this Friday. I literally go and up in Pleasantville, sit through like 1 hour of just Excel documents of our markets. And then we do this really fun champagne tasting of like a blind tasting flight of 12 different champagnes. We did 4 rounds of 3, kind of blind tasting Bollinger and Ayala against, all the top marks. And then the next day I just get in an Uber and go to JFK and show up in Champaign and then learn everything from there. So it was like,
that's crazy.
It was a really kind of fun onboarding. And that was the beginning 2 years ago.
Well, that makes sense because that's when I met or saw the team in my hotel in June 2016. So it's probably an annual thing, right? In June. And that's awesome. So tell us about some of the things that you've done since you've been at your post.
Yeah. So, at the end of the 2 weeks there, it was kind of like, what are our next steps? They're like, that's your role. You tell us. So one thing that was really, really
no
clear
pressure.
from, like you tell us. And we're like, oh, great. Let me figure this out. So one thing that's super clear from my experience there was how much champagne was just a part of the day-to-day life. And it was not celebratory. It was not exceptional. They're exceptional wines for unexceptional occasions. Like you make the occasion exceptional by bringing the champagne to the table. And so I really made it my mission to try to create as many champagne dinners at regular American farm-to-table restaurants. Actually did a couple at a Hawaiian restaurant here in New York called Narita. Did some surf and turf. We did some Mexican. We did a sushi making class. So the idea was like, just take champagne to your regular dinners and make it a 3-course menu. And you can show that you can do 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 different styles of champagne with every course, whether it's fried food or if it's fish or if it's chicken or it's vegetarian or it's bread or it's nothing at all. Like it works. And you can do a burger, you can do pizza, and just to show how versatile the pairing was and how you can make the menu special by drinking champagne and showing that really high quality champagnes do not give you a headache, that they actually all taste very different. It's not all the same stuff with fizz. And that was really, kind of one of my first missions, like how many people can I introduce to champagne as your dinner pairing throughout your dinner and not the first thing you order or the last thing you think about or what you drink before you go to dinner, but it's actually your dinner pairing. So that's been super fun, like working with chefs to get to create menus and, talking about, and, a French chef is easy to work with, but when you're talking to chefs that, don't really drink champagne, they're like, we're going to pair my burger with champagne. Like, what?
Yes.
Like, taste it. Like, taste the RD. Like, this is made from Pinot Noir. This is
I want this
wine.
with a burger right now, right?
Yeah, so good. And so that was kind of like one of the first initiatives I took on. The second was just realizing, you can't practice what you don't live. So I couldn't really step outside and create something, so outside of my own world. And my own world was already so rich with opportunity. I lived in New York for almost 10 years at this point, and I have great friends and friends from school and friends from work outside of the wine industry who just don't know anything about champagne. Like they are well-educated people, they have great jobs, they travel, and they know nothing about champagne. Like, how many people can I just teach and like, where can I meet them that they feel comfortable learning about it? And it's not something that's like, oh, I drink champagne on New Year's or champagne's too expensive or only drink Dom. And it's like, what don't you know and what makes you uncomfortable about learning? And so just kind of finding interesting partnerships. So I did something, one of my first events that I remember so fondly was with Rafa Cycling Club. It's this boutique high-end cycling club in Soho. And every Saturday they do long rides. So I'm a huge runner and athlete. So I was like, I don't think champagne and working out are mutually exclusive. I think you can definitely do both in balance. So like, why don't you guys go on a super long ride and meet you halfway? Not me, because I was setting up brunch, but I had like a team that met them halfway with like coffee and croissants. And at the end of their ride, they get to the Rafa Clubhouse, and we just had like a beautiful brunch spread, just like sandwiches and eggs.
So fun. I
And
love that.
tons of champagne. And the riders like, and it was like after a super rainy Saturday, so everyone shows up like mud head to toe. I mean, it was just like the funniest people that show up for like the champagne brunch. And like, this is my best Saturday this year. And to just, finding really unexpected moments to introduce champagne to someone when people are kind of caught off guard and they give you a second. So I have this other company I started before I started working in this called Dino Vinyasa. And we teach a yoga class based on a wine topic.
I never knew you were part of that. I never knew you were part of that. Okay.
Morgan and I started that together.
Okay, great.
And so that's kind of what gave me the inspiration was you teach someone a yoga class, you're talking about wine, you're doing yoga. And at the end of the class, you just have this moment of clarity and you're a little bit more patient and you're ready to listen. And then you actually take someone through a tasting and you're like, it doesn't have to be that hard. Like everyone has a nose, everyone has a mouth. Hopefully you don't have COVID so you can smell and taste. And you actually really, an untrained palate is like you eat food, right? You if you want to order the fish or if you want to order the tater tots, like you know what you like. It's not a secret in wine. So just kind of giving people a chance to taste for themselves, like it's not mind blowing. It's just a chance for you to open a bottle and taste, and that's been really fun to kind of find the surprising moments to introduce people to the wines.
Totally. Well, I think that anyone that's in this business quickly realizes that if they're going to last the long haul, they need to incorporate health and wellness religiously into their routine. And I know for me, like I'm a big yoga person and I do yoga 3-4 days a week on average, and I need to sleep, I need to read, I need to walk the beach, I need to do all the eat clean, all the things to be able to hydrate. Here's my water and a beautiful gold.
I was like, I got my giant water bottle to me always.
Right.
It's like the thing in my every Zoom call.
I have the whole bottle over here, but it's like, if you're going to really last the long haul in this business, we all love the decadence and the beautiful dinners with the boss, that you're like the steak and the champagne and the martinis and all that jazz, but we need to reel it in on our days off and be healthy and also incorporate it into our lifestyles.
I think you're right. Like if your job is fun, then you're lucky, but you can't let the fun take over your entire life. You have to think about it and actually really appreciate the moments of what does your work mean? Like, are you creating an event for someone? You can't taste the wine stuff, the event you're creating for someone. So it's finding the balance and kind of the beauty in all the moments. But you're right. Like for me, wake up and work out every day, no matter how bad my hangover is.
Definitely.
That's actually how you get rid of a hangover. You just let it out. I know most people don't subscribe to that, but
I do. And I also subscribe to, I don't subscribe to the hangover greasy brunch. Like I love to go really healthy the day after a big indulgent night. And also drink a lot of lemon water. I'm a lemon water freak. So it's my thing, but alkaline, lemon water, all that jazz. It's so good for you. I love that you launched that. And I love that you've incorporated it into the activations you've done. So quickly, I'm going to answer a question. So or ask a question. Becky Sue is asking, what's the target market for Bollinger and how does it differ from Ayala?
So this is something that you get sent in a really cleanly safe, worded PowerPoint presentation from France. Like our target market is like this. And I was like, your target market are humans.
Right.
We want people to everyone is a potential consumer. The way I think about it is Ayala, I think, is a great champagne for really anyone. Like to me, Brut Majeur is the Goldilocks of champagne. Like whether you love champagne or you only drink Prosecco, it is just the perfect entry option because it's so balanced and so fresh and so pure that you might not, if you're kind of a champagne, like I drink all the champagne, I have my opinions. You take a sip of it and before you know it, the bottle's usually gone. It's like, okay, you liked it. And then, from a value standpoint, Ayala is really attractive. The challenge with Ayala is people treat champagne as this hybrid between wine and spirits. So people are very brand driven in champagne. People really like going after the names they know more so than a white wine. You go to a restaurant and you order a Sauvignon Blanc, but if you go to a retail store, more often people just ask for Moet or Veuve Clicquot or Dom Perignon. And you kind of, you call for the brands you know, more like you do with spirits. So the challenge with Ayala is showing this value and making people understand kind of the history of the house, the integrity of the house, if they don't know the name. And people often shy to pronounce it. So it's
right.
other little kind of psychological barrier. Bollinger, to me, is, you know, so beloved by the Brits. For the people in the UK, Bollinger or Bali, you know, it's like, we love Bali. It's an ab-fab. It's in, you know, it's all in the great Brit movies. For them, it's given. It's like, that's their Dom Perignon. Like, everyone wants to drink Bali all the time. In the US, you have a bit of an older market that's probably spent more time traveling in Europe and the UK looking for it. So, you know, certainly it's, you know, instructing people that maybe just took it for granted, like, what is the actual difference between this and other champagnes? But I really look for opportunities to introduce Bollinger to, you know, markets that maybe haven't been introduced to it before, people that, you know, come from spirits, people that are more interested in red wines. Like, this is a really great opportunity for you to taste something sparkling that you maybe didn't think was going to be of your palate, but you can actually pair with all the foods that you were drinking, that you were already, you know, consuming with other wines you were drinking. So I think, you know, the opportunities are great for both. Bollinger would like to say, you know, it's this kind of consumer, Ayala wants, you know, this consumer.
I have to tell you that I was studying abroad when I was 21. I won't tell the year. And I was in London, and I ended up staying there. I went to London College of Fashion, and I was an old soul always, and I always drank wine. And there was this wine bar, and I had my 21st birthday there, and I celebrated with Bollinger. And I cannot tell you the cuvee, and it wasn't the
Special
first
cuvee,
time
probably.
I don't remember. It was like a blast in the past, but I know it was Bollinger. And it wasn't my first champagne that I had ever had, but it was my first memorable champagne that I had ever had.
Oh,
and it makes so much sense that it was in the UK. I come later to find out that, like, it's the champagne there. So, or the namesake, really, I feel. And I don't know,
the flavor is so distinct that I do think of it from a consumer perspective. Like, I've actually done in-store tastings. You're at a wine store and you're pouring wines for people, and I've literally poured Bollinger for people that want to spit it back out. They're like, this is gross.
Really?
I had this one woman. I think she was from Alabama. She was like, that had bubbles in it. Like, you didn't tell me that. I was like, I'm sorry, it was champagne. And this is, you know, me being ignorant and taking for granted that everyone just assumes, like, I just assume if I say champagne, someone has bubbles in it. She was like, I don't drink things with bubbles. Like, well, I'm sorry, all champagne has bubbles. She's like, I don't want any of this. And then other people are just like, I like Prosecco. Like, this is kind of gross. And I was like, you know what? It's a really different profile. It's robust, and it's,
totally.
You know, you can't quite call it nutty right out of the gate. It just has this really kind of distinct, rich character to it. And if you're not prepared for that and you're used to drinking other styles, you know, it's not everyone's cup of tea without preparation. Because I think it's like the first time you have coffee as a kid, you're like, this is kind of bitter and I don't like this.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, wait, where's my coffee?
Yeah. Funny you say that, because I am down in Hilton Head with family right now, my parents, and I was raised in Hawaii, as you know, and they just moved to the Southeast in September. So this is the most time I spent with my family in over a decade. Like, I've lived in New York too for about a decade. And you can see behind me, I have all these champagnes, right? So, and premium sparkling wines. Well, they're not, I don't think that my family is getting the whole palate thing down. I'm like, well, what do you think of this? Like, how do you think that compared to this? And they're just like, meh, whatever. Well, today I poured my mother some of this before I hopped on the call, and she was like, can I have a little more of that before
Great. That's so exciting.
And I'm like, yes, Mom, you finally see. She doesn't know how to detail it, but she asked for more of the most expensive wine I have on this lineup. So she knows. She knows.
So I was like, you know what? Like, your palate is what your palate is, whether you like it or not. is not kind of independent of how much wine you taste. So I was like, just try it. If you don't like it, it's not, one sip isn't going to kill you.
Totally.
But it's funny, when I first got back from my 2 weeks at Bologna, I went to go see my parents as a surprise before I came back to New York. And my parents don't really drink either. And I poured my glass a little bit because he's like, I don't really drink. Like, I don't want any champagne. I was like, all right. And you pour him, like a little bit, and he just shoots it back. Like, oh, it's really good. I'll have some more. I'm like, no, these aren't shots.
You're like, please.
Champagne. I was like, smell it, drink it. And he's like, I can tell it's very good. And kept asking for more, but he wasn't really...
He doesn't know why. Yeah, like my dad, my mom's like a one and done. She's quality over quantity. My dad is quantity over quality. Like, he loves beer. He's a beer drinker. So all these Wednesdays that I've had these weekly Zooms, he has his beer, and then I pour him a little splash of this, and he's like, boop, take it back, and he has a sip of beer. I'm like, no, don't do that. So will you tell us a bit about how you have navigated the brand representation, the marketing, the promotion during COVID?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's been super tricky. It's, first of all, as much as I like to say that my role has been introducing everyone to champagne, it's farm-to-table dining, it's so simple, it's not. I mean, the majority of U.S. consumers still believe that champagne is a special occasion drink, and granted, it's not the cheapest thing on the shelf, so I understand you're not probably reaching for it every week. And so as, large events close down and graduations are moved to, into individual homes, and weddings are canceled, and large ceremonies where typically you had a lot of champagne being opened, a lot of sales stop, and everyone's in a really uncertain period. So people usually retreat to the behaviors that make them feel comfortable. Like, I've read, so many people are like, I'm basically eating my kids' food. Like, I want chicken fingers and mac and cheese. Like, I want things that make me feel comfortable and at home.
That's
and if
delicious,
you already,
champagne.
Yeah, exactly. But if you weren't a big champagne consumer before COVID, it's going to be really hard to convince you, like, as the world is becoming uncertain, that, like, now's a great time to try this, like, really expensive new habit. It's like, no.
Yeah.
And then you have the economy, which is uncertain. You have people losing jobs. You have illness. So it's, from a marketing standpoint, it was like, we're better off just being silent. Like, I took my stacks and stacks of business cards that I've accumulated over the years and just went first to my person that, I've met, and made sure to reach out to everyone, say, hey, I'm just thinking of you. I hope, you and your family are well. If you guys need anything, like, I'm here, but, like, how are you doing? That was kind of the first point was just like, check in with the people because relationships are everything. And, that led to some interesting conversations. Some people, they told me about, their grandparents that I didn't know they lived with, or, cousins that come out of the woodworks, and just, different stories that came out. So it became a really nice moment to reconnect with people. It's not been about sales this entire period. It's really just been about reaching out to the people I've met and having, them ask me, like, hi, I have, my son's graduating next week and we have nothing going on. What do you recommend? So, I put together some personal tastings for people. Like,
great.
Let me find a way to find someone that's local to you that can, sell you the champagne, and let's all open the champagne together and order pizza at home and just, like, have a pizza party and drink champagne. So, like, little things like that, just making people feel connected, and, letting them come to you when they want it. It's not really a time to push. It's a bit insensitive. And the Champagne region put out a notice that they were expecting at the beginning of the year to sell about 324 million bottles globally. They now have decreased that projection to under 200 million bottles. So they've already calculated output will fall by more than a third this year.
Oh, wow.
So it's, it's not a time to push anyone out of their comfort zone. It's to meet people where they feel comfortable and to really just support everyone through their journey. So that's kind of been the focus during this time, is being available for people when they need you, and, knowing and, giving them a contact. Like, if you have any question about anything related to wine or food or industry, I'm here. I'm here as, an ear to listen. So that's kind of been the new focus.
I think that's great. And I was thinking about it today, like, not that I haven't thought about it the whole time, but I feel like I've strengthened so many relationships with people in the business during this time, which is so ironic. But I just think like, you know, same kind of thing. Like I'm doing these, I'm not monetizing off of them. I'm not like being like, hey, I want to be on the Zoom for like $500. It's like, no, I'm just kind of like, okay, well, I have a little bit of a platform. I want to do something to keep not only my brand alive, but the category alive of premium sparkling wine and champagne. And then on this, you know, I'm kind of just like you said, like emailing everyone, like, how are you doing? Like I have a to-do list every single day and I literally write it down old school. And
Same.
almost every day, yeah, I love that though. I need
I'm
the
like frog
physical,
and toad. Like if I did something
right?
that's not on my list, sometimes I write it in the bottom of my list just to cross it out.
Yeah, to
My
cross it
fiance's like,
out.
"You're
It's like
so
the
crazy."
physical, the physical aspect of crossing it out. But I also am like, okay, I write not every day, but some days I'll write like 5 people. You haven't caught up with Eric or Naomi lately. You need to like see how they're doing because they're up in New York, you know, or I'll put friends and I'll like message them, you want a FaceTime date?
Yeah.
It's just kind of forging those relationships even more. I will get to a question that Reshma had. It says, it sounds like there are a lot of events associated with being a brand director. How do you measure the effectiveness and impact of the event? I know that's super challenging because you get requests all day long for money, product, donation. Yeah.
So I primarily try to structure my events as a way that is helping an account and finding new people. So I usually try to partner with someone that I know just opened a restaurant and they're looking for business. So if I can give them business and they say like, this to me was a good night, like your dinner brought me good business, then to me that's important. Like I was able to use an event to bring, you know, some small business, actual business. And the other way is to meet new people and introduce someone to new wine. So I measure it by, you know, talking to everyone after the event, sharing my business card, saying, you know, is there anything that surprised you tonight? Like, what did you like? What did you not like? And feeling, you know, if I can connect, these are small dinners, right? I'm not doing 300-person events. I like 14 to 20-person dinners.
Yeah.
So you can actually see everyone in the eye and have time to talk to everyone. And if I get 2 or 3 people from each event that said, like, this is really cool, I didn't know this, or I've had this once before, but I didn't know that, to me, that's success. And then, you know, I always try to make sure a retailer is tied into any dinner. So I can, you know, send business back to a small retailer that, you know, maybe didn't have a big private client list and say, you know, if you ever want to purchase from this person, I sent you. So you kind of keep building your chains of connections. Say like, tell Eddie, I sent you. And then they write to Eddie and Eddie's like, oh, so you came from Rafaella. Cool. Like, let me give you 20% off or free shipping or something. And, you know, then he gets business. And so it's just finding ways to share the business as widely as possible as you bring more people into the circle of knowledge and hopefully, you know, teach them something they like and introduce them to something that, you know, they're excited to share with other friends. But calculating the ROI from each of these events is one very big part of my job. It's called the France Agrimaire reporting. And so let me tell you, this is the death of me every morning when I have to fill out that report. And it's challenging, but, you know, my metrics are like, do I help a business that's small and upcoming or, you know, looking for clients? And did I meet people where they wanted to be met?
Yeah. So what are some of the plans that you have in place for brands as the economy reopens on that note?
Yeah. So
you're like,
doing a lot of talking about that.
Okay.
No. So
it's tough. I mean, I don't know from New York Champagne Week. I have no idea what I can do with it yet. And we were talking about that before we started.
Yeah, so we have actually 2 really exciting things happening for both brands. Each brand is launching a new cuvee.
Oh, sweet. Okay.
So it's been this like super special thing and also very challenging thing to navigate. And the idea is to figure out like who wants to buy a new champagne, who can we introduce it to, what kind of virtual events or small in-person events, you know, will be safe and fun to host to get to teach someone about something. So that's kind of the plan for coming out of this is, you know, where do you catch people up? Where are people going to have bandwidth? Like if a restaurant's reopening after being shut for 4 months and they have to figure out how they're going to pay 4 months of rent when they weren't operating, and they have to, you know, figure out how they're going to get their kitchens to cook 6 feet apart safely so not everyone in their kitchen catches COVID, so they actually stay open at the restaurant, so they have an actual staff on the line. It's like their problems are going to be much bigger.
In events, for those of you not in events, you know, a lot of these restaurants rely on events to pay their rent, to like buyouts, events. It's an interesting space to navigate because, who knows what they can do if they're having to do the 50% capacity, the six feet distance, sorry. But to your point on the intimate events, I'm with you on that. Like 7 years of Champagne Week, my biggest event is the opening party, which you all sponsored. Yeah. And that's usually never more than 75 people. Like I'm all about quality over quantity. And I like those 20 to 40 person events, kind of like that intimate crowd, and you know what you're getting, and people are really interested in what they're taking in, not only consuming, but information wise. So I'm with you on that. So that's kind of one silver lining to restaurants reopening and doing events. Like if you have that quality over quantity mindset, like I've worked with many brands who are asking, oh, well, how many people? Like, and I'm like, never more than 75. I don't want 150 to 300 people in a room. Your brand gets lost in the mix.
I think there's a time and place for every size of group. For my mission, which is maybe not the most scalable mission, but it's really connecting with someone and feeling like they got something directly from me and they had an experience that was meaningful to them. It's hard to do at scale. I'm one person. Other brands that are bigger and more established and have had in-person teams in the U.S. for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, and they're more than one person in each coast.
Right.
You can do something that's larger. If I'm one person, I want to meet you in a high quality way. I'm not going to say like, everyone come together and open a bottle. It's like,
well, even at the opening party in November, you were like, we captured a picture of that today, like across all the social media forums, you were pouring the wine for people across the room. And that's what I want for you to be able to do, is have like those one-on-ones, like your 5 minutes, quote unquote. So before we get to questions, I just have a couple of fun questions. What has been your favorite at-home food and champagne pairing during this time?
Yeah, I love that question. So it's kind of funny. I know you kind of have this written somewhere else, but I am Brazilian.
Yes.
And I remember in college, like every person that probably, leaves their parents and like, I think I'm gonna be a vegetarian. And my dad was like, what are you gonna eat? I was like, I'm gonna eat broccoli and beans and rice and, like listed 100 different foods. He's like, no, you eat meat, chicken, or fish. Everything else is the side. And it was like, so I was like, oh, okay, well, like, I guess I'll eat tofu at school. I'm not going to tell you, but eventually I was like, well, like you're right. Like a meal is chicken plus other things. And beginning of this year, we got a documentary called Game Changers, and I did some reading. And then you have all the issues with the meat plants, and when you're cooking every meal at home, you kind of like look at the prices of everything you're buying. You're like, wow, like it costs a lot more than like vegetables. So we've been experimenting with a lot more plant-based things. So I've had a fun time doing like cauliflower tacos and champagne. So taco night is probably my favorite night because I could just like change the vegetable preparation every week and like make sure there's a lot of, different umami and like seaweed or like citrus flavors, and just open fun champagne to pair with that. Mm-hmm. So I'd say taco night is my favorite night, even though that's the night that someone else has to do the most dishes.
I would do I love mushrooms. So like a mixed mushroom taco, like a soft taco with this rosé would be epic. So I love that. And then where is the first place you will fly for leisure / vacation when this is over? Or what's the goal? Like, what's the goal?
Yeah, so we actually did book a small friend trip to Antigua.
Ooh, fun.
Over Labor Day. So, I mean, it's
great.
like one of those trips that everything is covered if nothing is possible. But I am hoping to make it to Antigua in September. We shall see.
And then one more question. And then I'm going to let Becky Sue ask her last question in person. I'll have her unmute. But what was my question? Which restaurant dish do you miss the most to pair with Bollinger or Ayala?
So hard. There's so many. I mean,
I know you can't like call one out, but is there any?
Yeah. The issue is champagne is expensive. So usually the restaurants that are pouring the champagne where I can get a glass are also serving very expensive dishes.
Right.
But I have to say something that I never thought I would fall in love with and get to enjoy would be Maria's crudo platter with a glass of champagne. That crudo tasting is phenomenal. But also Polo Bar's fries or Frenchettes fries.
Mm.
So good.
Well, Maria's doing, they were an early adopter of like the takeout, and they have a really sweet deal on all the wines, like a really healthy percentage off of the wines to go. I don't want to say it, but I thought it was like 30% off or something. I thought it was a really good deal.
Yeah. I think it is. Honestly, I'm trying to support the people that are closer to me in my neighborhood than up in Central Park South. And I think their investors are a little bit better off. And also so much of the fine dining culture, you know, I saw like Masa is doing an $800 omakase to go.
Oh my gosh.
And like, but it's so cheap because a dinner there is typically $1,700. And you're like, awesome. I still wasn't going. But like, you know, the beauty of some of those places, you're not paying for the food, you're paying for the service and for the ambiance, and to not do your own dishes or have to throw away all that cardboard and plastic and take out. It's like, sometimes takeout has to be simple and make sense. So it's like, you know, some of those really luxurious experiences are best enjoyed at the restaurant.
Yeah, I'm an East Village girl, so I totally get it. Like if I were there, I'd be trolling East Village and getting all the yummy international kind of food. So right now I'm gonna unmute everyone, or try, because I've been having difficulties with this too. Here we go. I'm just gonna go down the line, I think. Or everyone can, I don't know if people can unmute themselves.
Yeah, I'm unmuted.
Yeah. So people can ask questions if they would like. I know that
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hello.
I spent many years in Madrid, 8 years in Madrid, and as you know, there people go out for dinner, and my best friend, her parents just had cava with every single meal. So we got into that, like just always pop a bottle, whether you're at home or whether you're going out. And sometimes we would go for Italian and we'd get a gigantic, like linguine carbonara or something huge.
Oh.
And then do the champagne sangria, or the cava sangria, which is delicious. It's just like a gigantic urn they bring out with tons of fruit, and that just cuts that super, you know, heavy spaghetti that you're eating, the pasta, and it just goes back and forth and back, and you just could do that all night. So I'm a big fan of having cava with dinner, or champagne or prosecco. So I do like pairing it. But my question about the consumption in the UK is pretty fascinating, because I spent some time there, and they're the largest consumers of sparkling wine, or I guess champagne, right, in the world.
Yeah.
And when I
outside of France, so France still does have 50% of the champagne market, but they ascribe that a lot to tourism.
Yeah, and when I was there, my girlfriend was like a restaurant critic, and we would go out, and I could see why they were like number 2 consumers. But I was just thinking if there was a way that maybe you could work with some of the embassies, and if you got in with like the UK embassy, that they know the brand, they love it, it'd be a way for them to do something for their members or their people that are here, and they could maybe do, I'm just thinking of people that would be low.
That's brilliant. Thank you. I know we've worked with the French embassy in the past, but I don't know if we've ever tried working with the UK embassy, but that's a brilliant idea. So thank you. I will take
you, Christina. So I will say Christina is a female financial advisor, obviously female financial advisor for Barnum Financial Group. And we actually do a quarterly event together called Women, Wine, and Wealth. So we've been doing that for about last year and a half, and it's great. We talk about how to stay afloat, how to grow, how to sell your business if you want to one day, how to invest, all these great talking points. So if you stay or keep following me on Instagram at Business Female or Champagne Blaine, you'll see that, and hopefully you can come to one of them one day, Rafaella. They're awesome.
Yeah, I would love that.
Yeah. And then Becky Sue had a question earlier, and I don't know if you want to just ask it. You want me to read it?
I think it partly got answered. What percent does Bollinger export? And I think it's 50%. And is it similar to Ayala? And what is the percentage in the U.S.? Because I've spent time in the U.K. as well, so I know about Bollinger. But most people in the U.S., it's a hard slog for me to not only have them try it, but to understand the flavor profile.
Yeah, great points. Okay, so export size. So they often show us the benchmark. The benchmark for all champagne is 50% is French market, 50% is export. Both Bollinger and Ayala are more export than domestic market. Ayala is 40% domestic, 60% export. Their export, so Ayala as a percentage of all of champagne production is less than 0.1% of champagne. So they're very, very small. Their size in the U.S., they under-index in the U.S., they over-index in France, in Italy, in Belgium, in Australia, and in Japan. So their export size in the U.S. is they make up less than 0.1% of the champagne market of the U.S. Bollinger, on the other hand, their large export market is the U.K. So they do, I think, 30% domestic, 70% export. They do 40% to the UK almost, or they do 38% to the UK. So it's quite a huge percentage, and it's something that when we started, they actually were about 33%. And as the UK has actually decreased sparkling consumption overall, Bollinger has increased their market share in the UK. So it's been quite interesting to see how successful they are there. In the US, they trend between 4 and 5%. So they're really kind of a small percentage of the US market. They would like to be closer to 10, which is what their percentage of the market is in Italy and in Germany. And in Japan, they're inching up there as well.
And what about how do you explain the flavor profile, which is so different from what many U.S. consumers like? I mean, how do you get people to try it because it isn't what they're used to?
Yeah, so you know what's something that's funny is,
I would say, well, can I pipe in really quickly? I would say New York is a whole other animal, right? Like in the marketing of champagne, in my experience, you have to treat New York like almost another like country, right? And then there's the rest of maybe San Francisco, and then the rest of the U.S. in a way. Would you agree with that, or am I off par to your strategy?
Yes, New York is very specific in the sense that New Yorkers, and particularly because I work more with the trade and consumers that live in New York, for a large part of them have lived in European countries. So they're a little bit more schooled, let's say, in different champagne styles and champagne houses, and they're very familiar and comfortable with trying different grower brands. So you see many more small growers in New York than exist anywhere else in the world. So I mean, I even had people from Champagne come here and they're like, "They're selling this guy in this store? Like, I can't even find that in France." Yeah, they're like, "I thought that guy just sold out of his like garage basically, and like it's done." We're like, "Oh, it still goes to New York." So New York has this kind of like interesting problem that like we know the biggest and we know the smallest, and everyone that's slightly in between. So Bollinger, I said Ayala is 0.1% of champagne production. Bollinger is 1%. To give you scale, like Le Clicquot is about 9%, Moet is 17%, Krug is about 3%, Dom Perignon is about 6%. I'm talking total champagne production, not total sparkling production. Champagne constitutes about 8% of all champagne. So I think, one of the funniest things I learned right when I started this job was I was talking to the marketing director of Ayala at the time. He held up a glass and he said, "If I asked you what this glass of sparkling was, what would you say?" And like you say, champagne. Like, right, except less than 1 out of 10 times are you going to be right, because only 8% of the actual sparkling market is champagne. So it's a very strong brand, but the actual production size is small. So roundabout way of saying, you know, Bollinger has a long way to go. It's being renowned in the U.S. and the flavor profile is distinct, but I have done tastings with Veuve Clicquot. And it's funny because Veuve Clicquot is actually kind of a robust style of champagne. They use a lot of different methods. I've never spoken to the chef de cave, so I can't speak to what they do exactly to kind of create their flavor profile.
They have a lot of Pinot Noir in their blend too.
They do, yeah. And so I would say, you know, so Veuve Clicquot has this like rich Pinot Noir style, but it's also very reductive. So there's not an aromatic development, whereas Bollinger is very, you know, oxygen friendly in their winemaking. So when you smell it, you get a lot of different components right away on the nose. I think that surprises people if you ever smell champagne. On the palate, the best way I've ever described this, of course, was by the cellar master, the one that makes champagne. And he said in the cutest French accent, so I'm not doing it justice, but it's the apple in 3 phases. So it's like you're biting into a pink lady apple. It's not Granny Smith. It's not, you know, red Macintosh. But you bite into this pink lady apple, and then in the middle of your palate, you get this apple compote. You have this like kind of like toastier, creamier, you know, like mid-palate fruit. And then just at the end, you get this hint of cinnamon clove from the apple pie. And then the apple folds back over itself. Like you get that pink lady right in the finish, which is that acidity that kind of rounds it off and cleans it out. And then you want to go back to your next sip. So I think that's kind of the easiest way to explain the evolution of the palate. A lot happens in one sip. So if you take time to analyze it, that's often, you know, if you explain that to someone as they're tasting, you're like, take a time, think about like every step as you were sipping it, what happened. And then once you kind of explain that to them, people are like, oh, okay. So it's not a uniform taste. And I think that's what throws a lot of people off is there are a lot of things going on at once. And so if you're not used to tasting more complex dishes, you know, people like, if you like to eat like your chicken and then your beans, then your rice, you don't want all the things happening at once. And that's what Bollinger does. It kind of packages the champagne, like the champagne taste into every single sip. Has so many layers and you experience all at the same time. It's a little bit overwhelming almost.
That's a great analogy. One of the best I've heard.
Wow. That's really master. I can't take credit for
it. Does anyone else have any questions? If in a moment I'm going to go off recording so we can just chat, sip, hang. You can ask questions that you might not want to ask on the recording. Go like this if you want me to do that. Because I always like to have like a few minutes where we just kind of hang out afterward, off recording. So Angelica's like, yeah, do it.
Oh yeah.
All right, well, I'm gonna go ahead and then stop the recording and we can all stay on and chat a little bit more if you guys want to on a more casual basis. So
well, for anyone that's going to sign off, I just want to say thank you guys so much for tuning in.